Hey guys, and welcome to Overland NZ. Today we've got a very requested video. We're going to have a look at the Hilux here. It's been over 2 years since we last did an in-depth look at it, and quite a lot has changed since then. So yeah, let's jump into it. Thanks to our patrons for help making this possible. Learn more in the description below. So this video came out slightly longer than I was expecting. I've put bookmarks below so you can click, skip to any part of the video that interests you. So let's go have a look. The Hilux. It's a 2013 Toyota Hilux SR5. 5-speed manual, 3-litre turbo diesel, about as basic as they come, and in one of my favourite colours, blue. When we bought it, it had done 50,000 Ks and was a family vehicle previously. So I'd never been off-road, never towed, never done anything like that. It was purely used to go to the shops and school. So it was a real good buy and was immaculate. Sadly, it's not anymore, but it was immaculate. It's at about 110,000 Ks now, so we've put 60,000 Ks on it in that time. And it's been brilliant. Nothing's gone wrong, nothing's broken down. The only thing I've had to do that wasn't just general maintenance was a CV boot, but I mean, you know, it's part of IFS life, right? Especially when you lift them. So yeah, it has been brilliant. So, bolted to the front is a Bullbar. Went with an MCC Phoenix Bullbar for a couple of reasons. Number one, quite though it looks, it's got these cool LED daytime running lights, indicators, fog lights, and number two, it weighs quite a lot less than some of the other ones. Living in New Zealand, we don't have to worry about animal strikes, and so having a bar that weighs a ton on the front just isn't needed. You may as well have something a little bit lighter that offers you the approach angle that you want, a spot for a winch, but that doesn't weigh a ton. You know, yes, the quality of these, it's not quite as good as something way more expensive, but you're not paying premium prices for it, and I think it does the job fine. I've had it on here for coming up a year now. Still looks all good, it's never gone wrong. It does exactly what I wanted it to do, which was improve the approach angle. With the stock bumper and nudge bar that we used to have, it came out to kind of around here and it was really low. And I used to smash that on everything. Like the nudge bar's covered in scratches, the bumper's all kind of beaten up and stuff. And chucking a bull bar on just improved that approach angle immensely. So I'm super happy with that. Obviously up here, got our UHF aerial. The cheapo little one from, I think it was a Repco, cost me next to nothing. It's not great, but it does the job. And under here, hidden behind the number plate, we've got the winch. So it's a Runva 11 XP Premium, and it comes with some dynamo rope. It's 30 meters if I remember correctly. And this little dude here, the thimble. So I'm not the biggest fan of winch hooks, and I think a thimble solution like this is a much better idea. And as you just saw, number plate folds down, it's all covered up and you wouldn't know that it's there. So coming down here, very common question, what are these? So these are the MCC recovery points. They replace the bracketry between the chassis and the winch cradle. And I don't know, they're not cheap by any means, but the big bolts holding them in, massive pieces of steel. I've used them a couple of times. They seem to work absolutely fine. And they were way easier than trying to get the traditional hook style under here. They just didn't quite fit. I used to run them and it was gonna be a lot of fab work to get them under the truck here. So yeah, that's kind of the front. There's not really much to it. Bull bar, recovery points, winch, aerial, does the job. So coming around the side, it's not too much going on the driver's side for obvious reasons. We're going to set up our living over the other side. But starting down here, tyres. The Maxxis Razor AT 811s and a 265 70/17, sitting on a set of Sniper Ballistic alloy rims in a 17x9 positive 15 offset. These things are mint. I've put a couple of thousand Ks on them now, and I think, based on my experience so far, they are the best tyre I have ever run. Underneath, the whole truck is sitting on an EFS 40mm lift. So in the front we've got 100 kg constants, and in the back we've got 150 kg constants, which was probably slightly more than I needed, but that's all right. And yeah, that has been brilliant. Shocks, springs, complete replacements for every factory part. Moving up, Snorkel. I have no idea what it is. says Hilux on the side, so I assume it's a $100 trade me special, but it does the job. It's a Snorkel. So working our way back up on the roof, we are running the Rhino Rack Pioneer system. This thing is awesome. We've got the Rhino Rack Pioneer tray, and this is I'm pretty sure it's a 1300mm tray. It's slightly shorter than what Rhino Rack recommends, as I wanted it to sit back off the windscreen. Put the exact tray model down below. Underneath, got a 42-inch King's light bar. It's all right. It was very cheap and it does the job. Up on top, we've got the brand new Rhino Rack Stow It system, which is awesome. It's way nicer than the old spinny on, spinny off spade holder that we used to have. Of course, we've got our spade. It's one that I got from Bunnings. Lots of people have asked me about it. It's a cat poly fiber spade with a nice big heavy blade on the end. It works awesome, and as you can see, it's got a real long handle, which is nice for getting right under the truck. Next to that, we've got the Max Tracks and a custom Max Tracks bracket that I made out of a couple of strips of alloy with the Max Tracks pins. And over the far side, we've got the awning, and we'll get to that soon. This whole tray system is awesome though. I love how modular it is and just how easy it is to get new bits and pieces for it, and it's fairly quiet and it's just kind of nice. And this new model has got integrated wiring channels. I now no longer have light bar wiring running along the top of the roof, which always annoyed me. Alrighty, so moving our way down the back of the truck. Tent mount. So yeah, one of the most common questions we get is where do we get the tent frame from? I got this built by the guys at Kaizenworks in Lower Hutt, who've also done my suspension, Bullbar, Winch, and a whole bunch of other little bits and pieces for me. So I designed this and basically set it up so that when the tent's folded away, it lines up with the top of the roof tray and gives us a nice kind of low profile setup, which keeps the tent out of the wind stream and protects it a little bit when we're off road, so low trees and stuff don't bash on it too badly. It's basically just a couple of tubes welded together, powder coated in black, 2 bolts on the top, 1 bolt on the side for all 4 posts, and it's been brilliant. Like, it's pretty simple, which is exactly what I wanted. I didn't need anything too crazy. The only thing I changed next time is perhaps put some cable ducting in there, as I've kind of just got all of our wires and conduit and stuff just cable tied up, and it's fine, but it doesn't look as tidy as I'd like it to. All right, let's have a look at the tub. On top of it, we are running the Toyota genuine tub cover that I have modified slightly. So out of the factory, this truck came with a sports bar. Obviously that's gone, and the front hole for that lines up with the mount beautifully, and the back one, I cut it. And I didn't do the nicest of jobs, I'll be completely honest, as this was a short-term solution, which has now been on here for 2 years or so, as things typically happen like that. It works perfectly though. It keeps things a little bit drier, a little bit less muddy, and stops stuff blowing out and falling out when it's a bit bumpy. In the tub, so what we have in the tub obviously depends on what we're up to. Today we're not actually camping, we are just filming for you guys, so we don't have everything we normally would, but we normally got chairs, table, recovery gear, all those bits and pieces that you take camping. We have our camping box. This is where our cooker and I don't know, all sorts of bits and pieces, cutlery, cups, all those things you need at camp live. So this kind of acts as our drawers, I guess. I have actually built some drawers for this vehicle. I just can't decide whether or not I want to put them in, as I do like being able to use it as a ute at times. Like, it's pretty impractical because you're limited by the height here and stuff. But it is nice having just a space that I can put things and carry them around or do a dump trip. So yeah, whether they go in or not, I don't know. But I do have them sitting in the garage at home. Gas bottle. And water container. One super useful tip that I can offer you guys is chuck a piece of hose onto your jerry can, and when you turn it on, water comes out, and it means that you don't have to lift the jerry in and out of the truck. It's awesome and means that when it's full of water and weighs 20 kgs, you don't have to touch it. It can just sit there. And one last thing is the blue tub up there, which contains all of our electrical gear and spare parts and tools and all those things that you need when you're out on a trip. It's got 4 bolts holding in. I just drilled through the tub. I couldn't think of any other way to do it. And it's all just sandwich plated together, and man, it's been there for 60,000 Ks now. It hasn't moved, and it does the trick beautifully. It does take up a lot of space though, and would be nice if it was a little bit smaller. There's a lot of wasted space in that box and around the sides of it. So moving along, my pride and joy, our Feldon Shelter. So we've been running this rooftop tent for 2.5 years now, and it is brilliant. I absolutely love these things, and I wouldn't change it. The Feldon is still the best soft top rooftop tent on the market in New Zealand, in my opinion. We've had this on here for 2.5 years now. It has been brilliant the whole way through. Obviously we upgraded to the extended edition. Scotty's got our original one. He rocks it every couple of weekends, and it's still holding up amazingly. So, you know, they are worth the money, and the quality of them is right up there with the very best. You know, I love just going camping and climbing into this and having a snooze, and you know, it takes a couple of minutes to get it set up, a couple of minutes to pack it away. It's just awesome. So coming back a little bit more, one of the semi-recent additions is a awning. Went with the Rhino rack Sunseeker 2 by 2 meter awning, as it kind of was all we could fit on here without sticking too far out over the windscreen. And it is a real nice piece of kit. It's withstood crazy winds and rain, and it's nice to have a place that we can go and just kind of get out of the sun. I'm gonna be completely honest and say that I didn't really think an awning was worth it. It wasn't until we got this that I was like, oh yeah, it's not too bad. And then I got an awning wall, which I don't have set up today, but completely transformed my opinion of it. With that wall, you've got a space that's dry, you can block out the wind, block out the sun, and you kind of got this, your own little world hidden in there up against the truck. So, you know, if you don't have a wall, I highly recommend getting one. So just one other little tip with the awning. This being New Zealand, it is very windy, and putting your awning away in the middle of the night when the wind picks up is never fun. So I always just pack it away before I go to bed. It takes 2 minutes and is far better than having to get up at 3 AM and fight it in the dark, trying to get it back into its bag. Alrighty, so let's have a look under the bonnet. Not too much has changed under here, but you know, there's a few little bits and pieces just to help keep the vehicle nice and reliable. I need to pop the bonnet. Watch this. So under the bonnet here, we've got the good old 1KD 3 litre turbo diesel Toyota motor. I haven't done anything to it. It's completely factory, no chips, no tunes, nothing like that. It's not the fastest thing in the world, but I think it's got more than enough grunt for what this vehicle is. You know, it'll sit at 100 Ks on the highway, no worries. It'll climb hills, and sometimes you just gotta sit back and chill. Like, it's not a race. I'm happy to do 80 up big hills and stuff. You know, I'd rather keep this reliable and working well and well serviced than spend all my money chipping, tuning it, and you know, risking some of that reliability. Over in the corner, we've got the Rhino pre-filter and Rhino catch can. Being common rail, they are very, very sensitive to bad fuel, and given that we fill up all over the country and can't always guarantee the quality of fuel, it is nice knowing that there's something there to protect the injectors and pump, because you know, they're pretty expensive if they go wrong. And the catch can just stops that intake build-up with the sooty EGR rubbish that, you know, comes through the motor. I can't really be bothered taking the inlet manifold off to clean it out, and if I can extend the period before I need to do that, I've got no complaints. So it's all pretty plain under here. We haven't needed to do too much. If you guys have seen the previous video, you remember the battery used to be up the front. I had a few issues with that, where the guard was beginning to flex more than it probably should be. So I quickly took the battery out and I moved it to the back. Turns out it's a much better place for it anyway, and it has given me room to chuck in the winch isolator and things like that. One real nice thing that the guys at Kaizenworks did is put my winch controller up under the grill here. So most people stick them on the front of the Bullbar, and I personally don't like the look of that very much. Being up here, it's out of the way. I've got a wireless controller, so I don't need to run wires, anything like that. I quite like how tidy it looks just being up, out of the way in the engine bay. But yeah, it's basic engine, you know, they do the job. I'm happy with it. It does everything I need it to do. It's fairly cheap to run. And yeah, it just does the job nicely. Well, let's jump into the cabin and have a bit of a look. Some of the changes there. Front, there's not too much. The back, there's a bunch of cool stuff. So the inside of the Hilux, there's not a huge amount going on in the front here. It's function over form. You know, everything's hard plastic and cheaply painted plastic and stuff like that. It is what it is. You know, these are work vehicles at their heart, not family cars, and you do realize that when you sit in the cabin. They're pretty basic. So above the steering wheel, we've got a Adventure King's engine data scan gauge. I've got it for water temperatures and boost pressure and the load, which kind of gives me a semi, I guess, idea of what my EGTs would be. But the Sony, I think it's an AV something 1000. It's really cheap. It's got support for CarPlay, which I really wanted, and it also supports my reversing camera, which makes life nice and easy. And compared to the one that we had in here when we bought this actually works quite well. I wouldn't recommend one of those kind of cheap Android units to anybody. Ours was nothing but problems. And down here we've got the UHF radio. It's a cheapo Oricom, as I mentioned before. It's all right. It's a bit hard to hear, but thankfully there's a bit of space so it can echo around. This is where the ashtray used to be, and I have just cable tied it in onto the plastic. What else we got? There's not a huge amount. I've got some USB ports here. These two come on with the ignition. These two have got a little switch, and they basically mean that Chloe can charge up her phone and stuff when we're on trips and on the move, and we can charge up sort of random bits and pieces. I don't tend to use them all that often though, as all these wires kind of get in the way of changing gears, and I think it just kind of looks messy. Down in here lives our battery monitor. I don't know why it's here, I'll be completely honest. It just kind of was an easy place to put it at the time, but it would make far more sense to put it in the back somewhere. But I honestly don't keep an eye on it. Like, our battery is more than big enough and we've never come close to running out of power. So I just kind of ignore it for the most part. But yeah, the front, there's not a huge amount going on. It's all nice and basic and just does the job. The back though is a different story. So let's go and have a look at that. So this being a dual cab, it came with rear seats. We did a trip or two with them before getting fed up with stuff falling on the floor and falling out of the cab and stuff whenever you open the doors. So I took them out and replaced them with a false floor. I got an extra 20 centimeters or so behind the rear seats back, which is really nice, as it means I've got, so that probably about a meter now behind the rear seat to the back of the cab. It's just a cheap wooden thing that I've built with some carpet, and it bolts into the seatbelt mount bolt so it doesn't go anywhere. It's also wedged in between the seats and the back of the cab, so if you're any taller than me you probably couldn't drive this. By getting this we get a little bit more interior storage with a few different levels. So underneath, keep long things like the awning wall and anything kind of heavy and small that can go down there. Got some dogs. Hey buddy, what are you doing? So sitting on top of the platform on the driver's side, we've got the Waco CFX40 fridge. I went with just the fridge because, you know, we live in New Zealand, you're never more than a couple of hours from a shop, even when you're on a long trip. And this is big enough for a few days of food, drink, all that sort of stuff. And it's small enough that it fits in there, no worries, and we can keep space around it clear. Over on the passenger side, I've actually added another level. So it was originally just one level the whole way through, but we found that the dog couldn't see out the window, and dogs do love, you know, looking out the window. So I built another level so that when she's sitting up in a crate, she can see out. And that also meant that underneath we get more space to store food and camera gear and, you know, any other sort of light bits and pieces that can fit there. I recently added some USB ports too. So I found that we didn't have enough charging when we're at camp. I have some USB ports on the side of our electronics box, but they're a bit of a hassle to get to, and if it rains, I can't use them. But I'm the ones inside the cab now, it's brilliant, and I can charge up camera gear, drone, gimbal, action cameras, all that sort of stuff in the cab. They're really fast, and it's been one of those little mods that I wish I'd done a long time ago. In the blue tub, we've got our DC to DC CTEC battery chargers, our deep cycle battery, all of our fuses, all of our circuit breakers. We've got switches on the side that allow us to control all the lights inside the tent and underneath the tent here for the tub. Yeah, it's pretty basic. It works really, really well, and you know, it's a bit messy. I kind of put it together very, very quickly as I needed it for a trip, and I had taken it out from the front as I mentioned before. But you know, it's a real basic setup. It all works fine, and it's set and forget. I put this in here 2 years ago now, I think, temporarily, and I haven't touched it since. It just works, and it works really, really well. So I think that is basically a look at the Hilux. It has been a really, really good vehicle. We've put a lot of Ks on it. We've spent a huge number of hours in it, and it has performed flawlessly. But we are thinking it might be time to change the truck. So let's sit down and have a quick story time. All right, so real common question we get is why a Hilux? I don't really have an answer as to why I particularly a Hilux. I just like them. And we went with a Ute because they can carry a lot more weight than a wagon. Like this has got a 950 kg payload, somewhere around that. I weighed it recently and loaded up for a trip with no people. It came in at 2450 kgs, which gives us another 300 and something kgs to play with before we hit GVM. You know, wagons are awesome, but they definitely cannot carry as much. So you take an 80 series and you've got 350 kgs over what it weighs empty. You know, and even like a big 200 series, you've only got 600 or 700 kgs before you are right up there again. So the Ute was easy. We can load it up with everything that we need to travel for weeks, and we're still completely legal and within the vehicle's, you know, kind of design limits. And some of you have also noticed that Chloe hasn't been in the last couple of videos. And this kind of links back to this vehicle and the future of it. Me and her have got a baby due any day now, and being off-road and pregnant just doesn't look comfortable. Though I've noticed that she still likes to sneak out for a bit of a nap in the tent occasionally. So yeah, we're having a kid, and with that comes a few issues with this vehicle. Obviously, we don't run rear seats. I never have in the whole time we've had it, and we're going to need them because we need car seats. We're going to need to be able to bring a pram, the dog. You know, there's a lot of extra things that come with a kid. Well, I mean, the dog doesn't, but... And I don't know where all the things that are living where the back seat currently is would go. You know, I guess we've got three options. We can go with a fiberglass canopy on the back of the top there, figure out where the tent goes, perhaps on top of the tray. Perhaps we get the mount modified so that it can sit inside of a fiberglass canopy. It's probably my least keen idea. It's obviously the cheapest and the easiest, but I kind of think if you're gonna have a canopy, you may as well get a wagon. It's my kind of feelings behind that. And it still doesn't solve the access to the tub. Like, a tub is annoying and hard to get to, and things, you know, especially in the back, are really hard to reach. The next option is get rid of the tub, get rid of the tent frame, get a custom kind of service body style thing on the back, maybe a tray and a canopy. I don't quite know what I want to do there. Don't really need a tray. And that is another option. Obviously a little bit more pricey, but would give us a huge amount of flexibility. We can get some gull wing doors, put all the 12-volt gear and all that sort of stuff in there, tent on top, and that would be kind of cool. It does, however, mean we're stuck with this vehicle. As I said before, the Hilux is brilliant. It has done everything that we need it to do. It's been reliable. There's just a couple of things that I would really like to change about it. So the main thing that I want to change is the manual gearbox. I know that people love them. I personally don't. You know, in a fast petrol car that revs, yes. In a 2.5 ton diesel four-wheel drive, you don't need them. An auto gearbox and a turbo diesel, you know, especially a modern auto, pair up really well together. You get a huge amount of torque and smoothness and quietness, and you know, off-road they're so much nicer to drive, and you're not worried about burning out clutches and all that sort of stuff. So that's my main thing that I'd like to change. I am just over having a manual. I don't really know why I bought one back in when we got this. It just, it was kind of, I liked this truck. It was tidy, and I was like, I'll put up with it. The other kind of big one is the ride quality. This isn't bad, but it's still pretty Hilux-like. The rear springs might be a little bit overrated for the amount of weight that we've got, but it doesn't ride as well as a coil sprung wagon for, you know, obvious reasons. Leaf springs in the back, and I never expected it to ride as well. But around town, off-road, it is pretty harsh, especially when it's empty. So that kind of brings us on to our third option, which is sell the Hilux and buy a new vehicle. That does pain me quite a lot because I love this thing. It's had a lot of time and energy put into it to get it to where it is. But having a Ute is a very compromised thing. You know, you've got the cab and you've got the tray. They're separate entities. You can't, you know, join them together. You can't carry long things. And when you've got kids with all of the things that kids come with, there's not kind of a lot of easy space to put stuff. So we've been out test driving a couple of the wagons on the market, and I've got a very kind of strict list of things that it has to have. I want IFS, I want an automatic gearbox, you know, diesel or petrol, not too concerned. It must be modern, preferably newer than this. Just help with that reliability and safety. You know, it's a family vehicle. We do huge Ks every single year on it. Spend a lot of time on the road. So we haven't settled on exactly which one just yet. We're kind of just going through the different models, the different options, seeing what the trade-over price would be if we sold this and had to buy something else, and what we'd have to spend to do it up to the level that I would like. You know, if we do another build, it's going to be quite different. This here has got everything on it, and you don't need everything. And I'm kind of keen to go back to, not basics, but back to just a little bit simpler again, especially if it's going to be a, you know, touch more of a family and daily vehicle. So yeah, watch this space. Perhaps later on this year we might have something interesting to reveal. And finally, just because I know people love asking about this, I put a thing out on Instagram seeing what you guys want to know about the Hilux. Had a couple of questions come through, so I thought I'd quickly go through them. So first question, how is the rust with beach and general four-wheel driving? How do you protect and maintain it? Good question. We do spend a lot of time on the beach, as you guys have probably noticed. I am a pedantic cleaner, so Chloe laughs at me because I'm always out cleaning the truck, but I get under there with the water blaster, clean the whole underside, and then I get under there with just the hose, turn the pressure right up, stick it on all the chassis rails, anywhere that salt could sit. And you know, that's kind of the primary thing I do, is a lot of cleaning. You know, if I go on the beach, head around Red Rocks or something, Wellington, I'll spend 2 or 3 hours out underneath it cleaning it to try and get rid of any residue. I've also been using Lanox, which is a lanolin and inox sort of combination spray that you can put on the metal, and it sort of puts a barrier between the metal and the outside world. Been doing that for a couple of months now, and it seems to be working pretty well. There's been no new surface rust form or anything like that, and it seems to be, you know, holding up really, really well. But I mean, yeah, cleaning, and I guess something like a Lanox, and just keeping an eye on it. You know, if you do spot something that's starting to look a bit rusty, deal with it then and there. Don't let it get any worse. Next question from Cheap Jeeper. Why a Hilux and why not a Jeep? I wanted a ute, I wanted a diesel, and I want a vehicle that has independent front suspension. I want something that can carry some weight. You know, a Jeep is an amazing off-roader. This is an amazing tourer. You know, we don't tackle the hardest of tracks. This is not set up to do that. Yeah, I would love a Jeep as a toy. I can't deny that, but this is just a better vehicle for the sort of trips that we like doing and being able to carry the amount of gear that we do like to carry, especially when we're filming, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes along with that. JDC Ranger NZ, are you going to get diff locks? For this, no. It's not worth it. We're probably, even if we don't end up replacing it this year, we're probably not going to keep it long enough to make the investment worth it. And as I mentioned with the Jeep question, it's not built to take on the hardest tracks. That's not what I'm into. I learned very, very quickly years ago when I bought my first four-wheel drive that I'm not that interested in sitting in a bog all day or tackling stuff that's going to do damage. I like exploring remote places and spots that you need a four-wheel drive to get to, but you're not necessarily punishing it to get there. So diff lock, it'd be nice, it could do with one, but not for this vehicle. So Luke Reed asks, what do I think of the MCC gear? So I paid full price for all of that. There's no sponsorship, nothing like that. I went with that because it was less than half the price of an ARB one. It weighs less. I am under no illusion though that it is of the same quality. You know, I've had to touch up a little bit of the powder coating where it's come off just on the hard edges there with the can of spray paint. That's fine. You know, for the price, I am more than happy with it. It does exactly what I wanted it to do. Lets me mount a winch and I can, you know, pull the truck through stuff. It improves my approach angle, and you know, it probably won't last as long as say an ARB or TJM bar, but it also didn't cost me anywhere near as much. And you know, for what I do, it is perfect, and I am completely happy with the purchase. The only thing I'd change, and this has got nothing to do with MCC, is I want to get a hoopless bar next time. I don't like the hoops. I want to get something that tucks in a little bit closer to the front of the truck, like the one that we used to have on the 80 series. I know you can't quite do that on a modern vehicle, but I don't need hoops. It was just there because that came with this bar. And final question from Filthy40. Engine power, performance, and output. So as I mentioned before, it's completely stock. Back in my previous life, I used to drive fast turbocharged Subarus. I had a V8 Holden. I've had kind of those fun cars in that way. With this, it's enough as it is out of the box. I don't expect it to be a race car. It's a big, heavy four-wheel drive, and I drive it like that. I'm happy just to sit and chill and enjoy the scenery, and it'll do 100 on the highway, no worries. It'll climb most hills, no worries. And how can I put this? Every dollar that you spend on performance is money that I would rather spend on a trip. Instead of a chip on this and a tune, it's going to cost me a bunch of cash. I need to do the clutch because these clutches are useless. So before you know it, you're kind of $5,000 into it, and for me personally, it's not worth it. I'd much rather take that $5,000 and spend it traveling the country, time off work, diesel, having a great time. It's not about how fast you go, and I'm happy just to sit back and chill. This thing is fine on the highway. It's got enough grunt off road. You get it into low range, and horsepower doesn't really matter. That's my view on it, though. I know that some people love tinkering with that stuff, and that's absolutely fine. For me personally, it is what it is. I'm happy with it. We've been test driving these new vehicles, and they have a lot more grunt, but you don't really need it. It's about having fun and getting out there and exploring. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I know this has been a slightly long video, but I want to get everything covered just so that you guys can kind of see what is behind this and how we do these trips and stuff. Like this vehicle, I know it looks crazy set up. It's got everything on it, but it's fairly basic, and we operate it in a fairly basic way. It's designed to get us away from home and out on trips, and that's what it does perfectly. Anyway, please remember, hit subscribe, hit the like button, and I would be so grateful if you jumped over to Patreon and had a look to see if there was something you'd be interested in. Every little pledge makes a massive difference to helping us get out here and make more videos for you guys to enjoy. Anyway, catch you next time on Overland NZ. Whoop whoop.